How's it going, guys? This is a set review for Houses of Morrowind. I'm not going to do a big spiel about everything before we go in. I'm just going to tell you, this is the rating system, 1 to 5 stars. This is based on what you expect to see on the ladder, so not necessarily power level. For example, something like East Empire Crafter is a very powerful card, but it'd be rated like a 3-star because you don't see it that frequently on ladder, whereas there are non-powerful cards that would be rated 5 stars because you see them so frequently because they just fit into decks well. So that's what you're judging these cards based on, not on raw power level. 1 to 5 stars, 5 is something you'd see in a tier 1 or maybe tier 2, 4 is something you'd see in tier 2, maybe tier 3, and then go on, so on and so forth, and so whatever. I don't know. But we're going to jump right in. We're going to start with the tricolor cards because I think it's important to kind of establish what these payoffs are for the mechanics you're going to see throughout the other colors. So this is where we're going to start, and I think we're just going to jump in. I don't have a drink this time. So maybe I can do a drink. I can do one. Dang. Smoky. So we're going to break this up into 3 parts. The first is going to be these 3 color cards, and then the red cards, then we got blue and yellow, and then we got green, purple, and neutral. There's barely any neutral, so we're just tacking neutral on at the end. I don't think anybody cares about neutral. There's like one cool neutral card. He's a fat guy, so we'll get to that. Let's just jump in. 3 colors. So this is sort of why I needed to do the thing about power level, because by power level this is 100% a 5-star card. But I am going to be giving it a 4-star rating. The 3 color cards I think are going to be hurt by the fact that you have to play 75 card decks. I think they're going to be pretty inconsistent. Now, that being said, out of the classes that are given to us, the 5 3-color classes, there were 2 that jumped out at me as having, I think, very, very solid decks that could be part of this. And then there's a 3rd that I'm iffy on, but we'll talk about that. One of those is Dagoth. I think Dagoth has a lot of really good synergy with some of the cards in this set, and more importantly with some of the cards that already exist. And I think this is going to be a very, very solid color for control. I expect to see a lot of people trying Dagoth control. I expect a lot of people to try like slower Dagoth mid-range decks that are more bursty because it has the assassin colors and red, which also has a good amount of chargers and stuff like Dark Rebirth, Lightning Bolt, Donkano. A lot of burst damage potential in this, so we could see a potentially slow mid. You can, like, this is the colors of Merrick, mid-range assassin, control archer. There's a lot of ways to combine that, I think, in an effective way. So Dagoth is one of the ones I'm most excited for. This is an insane card. This is solar level in terms of power level. We are going to only give it 4 stars because I think while Dagoth decks will be good, they are not going to be good enough to make it consistently played. But this card is the reason I think they have any chance at all. So we're going to give this one a 4-star. This one is going to be a 2-star card. Don't have a lot of hope in this. It's very, very expensive. It's easier to trigger than it looks, but the payoff is also not as good as it looks. If you've ever played Singleton, you've kind of figured out that Set's Masterwork is a really weird card. It's never as effective as you think it's going to be. Obviously, there's potential in some combo decks for this to do something crazy, but the problem is 75 card combo decks are going to be so absurdly inconsistent that I just don't think it's going to really fit anywhere. This may make it into control lists if the meta is slow enough, but I just don't think it's that powerful of a card. The Hand of Dagoth is worth making your deck worse for. This is not. This is not powerful enough to make 75 works. You might include it incidentally because Hand of Dagoth pushes this up, but I just don't think this card is that good. Then we're going to come to Dagoth himself. This one I think is another 2-star card. I think the problem is, obviously this has immediate impact on the board, which is fantastic, but the problem is it has that immediate impact and then it dies. This is the only thing you're doing on the turn, and it is very, very easy to deal with in terms of hard removal. You can Curse Leaf Lurker. There's so many ways to deal with an 8/8, even if it has Ward, that I just don't think that this is good enough to be worth the 12 mana cost. Like I can see there's decks in Dagoth already that just straight up wouldn't run this card, which is really weird when you consider like these are what are supposed to be the incentives to run 3 colors. I think this is probably one of the weaker ones. Obviously, very, very, very insane, but 12 cost is the thing. 12 is an insane cost. Usually, it needs to win you the game. And I think there's going to be a lot of occasions where this just doesn't. I think there's going to be a lot of occasions where this is just a task ad that heals you. And I don't think that's worth 12, so we're going to give this one a 2-star. Balmora, Puppeteer 2, mana 2/2. I apologize for saying mana, by the way. I'm going to say mana. I can't say Magicka. It's too many syllables. I don't do syllables. But 2 mana 2/2. Plot, which is essentially combo from Hearthstone. I gotta stop mentioning Hearthstone, you guys are getting mad. But a plot, which is if you have played a card before this card, then it activates the effect. So this needs to be at least the second card you've played in a turn. So it gives +1/+1 for each other card you've played this turn. Don't think it's that good. Again, this is gonna be, I think, another 2-star card. I think it will see play in a lot of the Hlaalu decks because I think it's good enough. But the payoff is not that high. +1/+1 is not a super crazy effect. Obviously, this could potentially be a tempo swing if you combine it with a bunch of other cards, but it's a weird sort of tempo swing in that it's kind of spread out between a bunch of other bodies, and I think there's better ways to get tempo. Even in this set, we'll kind of see there's better ways to generate tempo than, you know, vomiting a whole bunch of cards than playing a big creature. Even if you... it could potentially be good as, like, if you're in a situation where you have to play double 2s a lot, if that meta swings that way, this is okay, because if this is the second 2 you play, it's a 2 mana 3/3, but I just think the upside isn't there, and it's going to need a lot of... It doesn't necessarily need a lot of setup, but it's just... it's not worth the setup. Haunted Manor, this one's going to be a 3-star, on the verge of 4-star. I think it's very, very powerful. So, I mentioned there was Dagoth that I thought would work. There's going to be another one that I think will work. This one I'm very on the border, which is why I'm calling this 3 on the verge of 4. I think Hlaalu aggro might be really, really good because of cards like this. This is a fantastic card. It's a comparable, I think, to Divine Fervor in that you say you summon 2 creatures, you get +2/+2. It's the same for Fervor where you get +1/+1 on each of them, so it's the same buff, but it's discounted by 3. Also, pretty cool to set up because you can kind of divvy the buffs the way you want. You can put all of the buff on the whichever minion you'd rather have rather than Divine Fervor, which just spreads it out evenly. So I think essentially Divine Fervor, which is already a fantastic card, discounted by 2 mana and having a little bit more of an interesting effect. This card is pretty fantastic. I just don't know how good 75 card aggro decks are going to be, but there is a ton of draw in this class. You do have Crusader colors, so I'm interested to see if Hlaalu aggro will work. Hlaalu tempo, possibly because of the plot. Cards could maybe make its way into being something, so we'll call it 3 stars, but I might look back and regret that. Duke Vedem Dren. Another reason I think Hlaalu might be pretty crazy as an aggro deck. We're going to call this one a 4-star card. The first time you play a card each turn, draw a random card from your deck with cost equal to your remaining Magicka. So this does not trigger off of itself, which is a little bit annoying. This requires setup, and there's a reason it's not a 5-star card. Is this requires setup? It requires it to stick. A lot of times you're using this in colors which might have rally though, so sticking might be not that hard to do because you have the rally cards from red and yellow. But the big thing is this is a curve wet dream. This is insane. This means when you play your first card a turn, you're automatically going to be drawing something that completes your curve. Like, that's crazy. On turn 6, you say you have a 3-drop in hand, you drop a, we'll say, Dawnstar Healer, and then you draw a 3, you're always drawing a 3-cost card. You're always drawing something that completes your curve after you play the first creature. So you have draw like a Brotherhood Slayer or something, and I think that's pretty insane. You can get off to a lot of really fast starts in these colors, so you do that, you play this guy, and then you just never kind of run out of steam. They're forced to deal with him. You have to deal with these guys or you're guaranteeing your opponent's going to have a good turn every single turn, which is just crazy. So I think this is a pretty fantastic card. If Hlaalu aggro works, it'll be because of this in Haunted Manor. On the verge, so this last one was 3 on the verge of being 4. I think this is 4 on the verge of being 3. I think this is a little bit better, but obviously the fact that it doesn't trigger himself is going to be a little bit awkward, and I'm not sure if the 75 cards will be worth it in something like this versus just regular Crusader aggro, but pretty dang powerful card. Redoran Forerunner, this is going to be a 4-star card as well. In terms of power level, it's 5-star card because it's completely busted. This is insane. This is fine by itself. This is totally fine by itself, and then every buff is just, holy cow. These are the 3 best keywords to have with buffs. So you have Charge, so you can get an immediate impact out of it, or do burst damage. You have drain, so you get an immediate impact out of it, and then you have ward, so it gets to survive and use that buff stat line again. So completely insane, amazing card. You have to play Redoran though, and I think a lot of these cards are going to be more in aggro decks, which want to be a little bit more refined and have consistent curves, which is not going to be as possible in a 75 card deck, although it won't be impossible. Very high power level card, not sure if it's going to push it over the edge. Very close to calling this a 5-star, but we're going to go with 4. Bolvin Venom, another 4-star card. Rally when you rally with no creatures in your hand. First draw Bolvin Venom from your deck. So it will draw him and then rally him. So if you rally, you have no creatures, you pull this guy as a 3-mana 4/4 that also has a rally. So that is pretty friggin' insane. And you would expect rally is a very aggressive keyword, so we're going to see a decent amount of aggro decks that are using this. I think any Redoran decks will probably be very aggressive, although the idea of tutoring something isn't necessarily that only can exist in aggressive decks. But we're going to call it a 4-star again for the same reason. I think it's about as high a power level as the previous card we saw, but I don't know if these are going to be good enough. I think you're probably just not going to be consistent. You're going to have to run too many cards you wouldn't want to run versus something like just like Crusader aggro or Warrior aggro, which involves these colors and gets access to the exact same cards. So I'm iffy on it. We could see sort of token-based strategies work. Just add sword to tokens, and then you can add these rally cards, but I'm dubious on whether that's going to work. And if it doesn't work, then obviously this is never going to see play. It's either black or white. If that sort of style doesn't work, this card will not work. So we're going to call it a 4-star. I think it will work somewhat, but I don't think it will be as good as the other aggressive strategies using these same colors. Inspiring Kinsman, Rally 2, which doubles the rally effect, so +2/+2 on each attack. Last gasp, give a random creature in hand +2/+2. So same thing as the last ones. Insanely high power level card. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it because everything I said about the last ones is the same for this. This is an insane power level card. This gets 1 rally buff. It's a 4-mana 3/5 that is a gigantic snowball and has a last gasp effect. That's crazy. That is completely crazy. I'm iffy on whether it'll work. I think it will work. Not as well as other ones. Again, just repeating myself. Call it a 4-star card. Archcannon Sarioni. Summon, choose a blessing from one of the Tribunal Gods, exalt 3, gain all blessings instead. So, these blessings are summon a 0/1 Spiderworker, which is draw card, so basically draw card. Buff every creature you have by +1/+1, which is solid. And give a creature drain and guard, which is probably the weakest one out of them. I'm going to call it a 3-star card. Probably close to a 2, but we'll call it 3 just because I think that token aspect of it is very nice. So I think if token strategies exist from this, and token mage and spell starter, both things, this card will be included in that because of the +1/+1 buff and the Spiderworker both being pretty good results for that. Problem is, I think to get the most out of this, you need to be using the Exalt synergy, and I think the Exalt synergy is terrible, so we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But don't think the power level is crazy high on this one. I've gotten to try this one a decent amount, and even when you get the kind of blowout with the card we're going to be talking about in a second, it's just not that good. It's not blowouty enough for something that is a 1 out of 75 and is supposed to be the reason you're playing these colors. This is the next one, Temple Patriarch. It's going to be another 3-star card. This is, I think, the reason if you want to play the Exalt stuff, this is the reason to do it. There's a huge power spike with this guy. The problem is it's just not enough. Like, this is a high power level card. I know it doesn't look like it, but having tried a decent amount of this is a high power level card. It's just all of the cards that surround it are so bad. I'm actually going to dump this down to a 2. I think this is a 2-star card. I think it's a powerful card, but I don't think Exalt's going to work at all. I've been trying these cards out, trying to see if I'm wrong about this, because on first glance they look really bad, but I just don't think I'm wrong. I think the Exalt cards are just really bad in this set, so this is tied to the power level of that, which means I'm going to call it a 2-star. This is going to be another 2-star card. There's a lot of 2-star cards, Jesus. This is going to be a 2-star card. I think that this is just not a very high power level card. Self-silence is something that happens quite a bit. You're seeing a lot of people running spinners in aggressive lists, which is sort of what you would want this against. It sets your own creature's power and health to 1, so I mean, allows you to develop back into the board, but only with 4 Magicka. If your opponent has a big board, you can use this, but it doesn't address the root of the problem. They get a chance to immediately develop back onto it, while you're stuck only having 4 extra mana to use to do the same thing yourself. So I just don't think it's that powerful. I think it's a worse version of Dawn's Wrath. Dawn's Wrath is already not an auto-include 3 of or anything like that. In Control Mage, it's usually cut down to 2 or 1. So I'm very iffy on this. There is redundancy, but again, I don't think Tribunal Control is going to be that good. That's one I'm really, really iffy on, so we're going to call this a 2-star card. Telvanni Catspaw. Last gasp to draw card if Telvanni Catspaw was sacrificed to draw 2 cards instead. So this is going to be our first 5-star card. I think this card is bonkers. This is completely insane because I think the Betray cards surrounding it, especially early on the curve, are absolutely good enough for this to fit in just about every single archetype you would want to play in Telvanni, which would be mostly just mid or tempo, or the control, or something in between. Generally assassin, the lines get very blurred, but I think it's crazy. I think the Betray cards are good enough to support it. 3 mana 2/2 draw 2 essentially, because you can usually get an attack on this. Even just 3 mana 2/2 give yourself Betray fodder or even just 3 mana give yourself Betray fodder. Ignore the stat line. Give yourself Betray fodder and draw 2 cards is insane in itself. And then you can use it as a body if you really need to, but you probably won't. I think this is going to be the backbone of a lot of Telvanni decks, and I think it's the reason Telvanni decks are going to be, spoilers, in my opinion, are going to be the best out of the tricolor classes. This and the next couple cards we're going to see in Telvanni are both fantastic, and support kind of the same sort of archetype. So we're going to see. I really, really like this card. This one I'm going to give 5 stars. So same as the last one, this is going to be a 5-star card. This is completely bonkers. This is a tutor effect on a totally normally statted body. That's a little bit understatted. You want like 5 mana, 5/7 would be somewhere around average. 5 mana, 5/6 is what people say, but 5/7, I think if it was a no text card would be what you want for playability. But 5 mana, 4/6, permanently shackle another friendly creature to draw an action of your choice from your deck. So you get a tutor effect that can give you whatever you need, including Betray cards, which are sort of in this line of what Telvanni wants to do. You also have a couple of huge bombs, essentially your late game finishers, which come in the form of actions for Telvanni, which we'll get to in a second. And yeah, the downside is barely a downside. A lot of times you're going to be picking like a Betray card out of this, and then you just betray the thing you shackled anyway to get the effect. You're going to be running a lot of like small tokens for Betray fodder in this. Maybe not tokens, but creatures that you're willing to sacrifice for Betray fodder in Telvanni decks. So there's basically no downside. It's essentially a 5 mana 4/6 draw an action of your choice from your deck, and I think that's crazy powerful. And it's going to be one of the reasons Telvanni is played again. So we're going to call this a 5-star card. And then the last one, just to finish this off, because I think all of these are going to be played together, we're going to call this one a 5-star card as well. I think this is bonkers. Summon a copy of a friendly creature, 9 mana. Also has the Betray tag. For those who don't know what Betray works, because I have been talking about it, I should probably tell you guys what it is. It is you can cast this, and then you can sacrifice one of your own creatures to cast it again. You have a choice. You don't have to, but most of these are costed, so you kind of have to. So this is essentially 2 doppelgangers in 1 card with a 1 magicka discount. So normally when you're combining things into 1 card, you expect the price to go up. In this case, it's going down. The Betray synergy, again, Betray is not going to be really a negative thing. You're going to have a ton of targets. You're going to have things that kind of want to be sacrificed in some senses. And I don't think that's a downside. I think it's basically just 9 mana, copy a creature twice, and this is also in a color with a huge amount of burst. You could copy Sun and Shadows itself. You could copy something like a Tirana for infinite value with a bunch of experiments being put into your deck. You could, of course, do it on Taskcat or Cliff Racer. Even something simple like Shearpoint has synergy with itself. There's so many targets for this. There's so many ways you could use this in which using it ends the game, which is what you want. It's obviously very slow, but it's slow enough to... It's powerful enough that you can kind of get past the fact that it's slow, because when you get this and it's good, it's going to win you the game. So I think this is a 5-star card. I think this is crazy. Telvanni is going to be a very, very interesting thing to look, and I think there's going to be a lot of different ways to build it. So just to sum up everything about these cards, I think Hand of Dagoth is one of the most powerful cards in the game, but Dagoth will be sort of a little bit below what it will need to be, but I think Control Dagoth will be quite good. In Hlaalu, I expect aggressive strategies to work, and Red Arena, I expect aggressive strategies to work. In both cases, probably not as good as 2-color decks of that same thing. I don't expect a whole lot of Tribunal. I think Tribunal did not get a lot of good cards, and sort of the things they got within their colors are also quite iffy as well. And then I am really impressed with Telvanni. I think Telvanni is going to see a ton of play. So that's 3-color cards. We're going to move on to the regular ones, so I don't have to make this a billion parts, which is red, or strength. It's a color. It's not an attribute. I'm just calling it a color. Bushwhack. 0 mana, action. A friendly creature ignores guards and can attack creatures in any lane this turn. This is going to be our first 1-star card. I don't see a situation where this is going to see play. This is basically the effect of Blood Dragon in an action. It is not even almost worth the slot of a card in your deck. There's so many better 0-cost things. Even if you want to combo with Skulk, you can... Firebrand is almost infinitely better than this. It's just a very awkward card. I don't think there's a ton of value with it. I don't think it's worth the slot in your deck, and I don't think it's going to do a whole lot, even if you have it and it's a good situation. So this is pretty easy 1-star. Ashlinger Zealot, that's going to be a 2-star. Very close to a 1-star itself. I just don't think... a 1-2 is good enough. Obviously, there's a ton of synergy. Battle is a very, very powerful effect, which is the only reason I'm calling this a 2. But Battle, very, very powerful. So if you have a lot of rally cards, this is something that could be pretty big tempo swing. Obviously, costs 1, so it's not doing much else in the whole turn. You play it, you kill something, you leave it alive. The fact that this doesn't contest anything in its base form is the problem, and it's not going to be easy to target rallies early on. So very, very low 2-star, close to a 1-star. I don't think it's going to see any play. Corpus Disease. Silence a creature and then give it +2/+0. This one's going to be another 1-star card. I think it's basically just a worse Suppress, although there is more versatility within Suppress. Suppress isn't even approach playability. You can use this somewhat positively on your own creatures if you're running stuff like Catapult and Imprisoned Deathlord, and then you can use it on enemies if you need to, but it's a really, again, cards need to be worth a slot in your deck. It's not just the fact that, okay, it only costs 1, so you should be getting this effect. It's also that you have the opportunity cost of another card you might have had in that situation, which has more impact, and this doesn't have a ton of impact. It's also quite inconsistent to find good value out of it, so I'm going to call it a 1-star. I don't really see where it's going to be played. Dagoth Dagger, not Dagoth's Dagger, which is kind of weird. I don't know. But this is 1 mana, 2/1 breakthrough weapon. Pretty simple. Gonna call it a 2-star card. Basically just a slightly worse version of Steel Scimitar. The only time this is ever really gonna see play is if there's a deck that wants more than 3 Steel Scimitars. I can see a world where that exists, so we'll call this 2 instead of 1, because it's not bad. It's just a worse version of a card that already exists. So call it a 2-star card. Maybe if somebody wants a ton of weapons in their deck, a ton of cheap weapons, this will find something, but I don't think so. Ugh. Serathi Scion, it's a 2-star card, rally super powerful effect, nice to get the snowball going early. Stat line just sucks, not too much else to say about it. 1/1 doesn't fight anything, very easy to deal with, gets contested by every single thing in the game. Not a big fan. There's other good rally cards, you don't have to play this one, there's plenty of options early in the curve. Fighter's Guild Harl, 2 stars. I can see this potentially being played in Link's Best Warrior or Self-Harm Warrior, which I think is a pretty fun deck and is a lot better than people realize. That's the only time I think anybody would play this, but it only costs 2. 2 is very cheap. You can find ways to do this. It does cost a slot in your deck, but there's enough impact and repetitive impact that it might be worth it if you build the deck correctly. If you build that deck correctly, it's still probably not a very good deck, but it'll be good enough that I'm not willing to call this a 1-star card. We'll call it 2. Move on. RIP Northwind Outpost. This is the new 2 mana red support. Ornery Kagudi is just a worse version of Lurking Crocodile. Protector of the Innocent. Prophecy is so much better than Breakthrough. Not too much to say. It's a 1-star card. Gonna see it in Arena and pretty much nowhere else. Dagoth Oathman. Summon if you have a green card in play, get +1/+1. If you have a blue card in play, get +1/+1. So possibly a 3 mana 5/5. I think you can reasonably consistently get this to be a 3 mana 4/4. You don't have to play this in triple colored attributes. You can just say it's a 3 mana 3/3. If I have a card from another color, it's a 3 mana 4/4. Red 2s aren't that good, but there's pretty good blue 2s in this set, and obviously I think green 2s are absolutely fantastic, so there's a reasonable chance your 2s are going to be a different color. Then you come up to this. This is a 3 mana 4/4, which is great, 3 mana 3/3, which is not good, but it's not the end of the world. Not a ton of downside with this card, so we'll say 3 stars. I can see it seeing play in not just the Dagoth decks. I think this will see play outside of it a little bit, but I just don't think it'll be that impactful. Halalu Sharpshooter. I hate saying Halalu. That is a tough word. That is a tough word to say. We're going to call this 4 stars. I think it's fantastic. I think it's a slightly worse version of Earthbone Spinner because Plot is not as easy to trigger as it seems. So I think it's a slightly worse version of Earthbone Spinner. But Earthbone Spinner is a fantastic card. So this is still a pretty fantastic card, even being slightly worse. A lot of stuff that it has synergy with could be pretty good in the Halalu aggro decks that I talked about. But it doesn't have to be. This could be in any color. This could be in any aggro deck, I think, and probably find a way in. If you run Raiding Party, it makes it easier, and a lot of aggro decks are starting to do that and have done in the past. Usually you're running a lot of cheap cards in aggro decks, so there's a good chance this will have synergy with that. Sometimes you do run out of cards, but people are figuring out ways to not do that anymore. There's a lot of resource extension in the game right now, so I think it's a pretty great card. Going to see play in a lot of different stuff and a lot of different archetypes. Excites me for aggro. Also excites me for stuff like the combo Numira Doomcrag Warrior. It'll also see play in stuff we haven't really talked about. That's the thing about expansions. We're all talking about what it'll fit in now, but there's stuff that doesn't exist that we don't know about, and this will fit in it too. It's pretty versatile, pretty just standard good. Lower Canton Smith Plot, equip a friendly creature with a +2/+2 Steel Scimitar. So this is a 3-mana 4/4 with upside. It can equip itself with the Scimitar because it says friendly and not another friendly, but you do have to combo it. I'm going to call this a 3-star card. I think it's got a lot of potential. 3-mana 4/4 that you can kind of divvy up the buffs where you want them to be is solid, but it's essentially a 1 attack increase on a Hrothgar Artisan, which is nowhere close to seeing play, and this has a problem in that you need to play something else before it. It's a 3-drop you can't ring out. Obviously, the difference between 4 and 3 attack that early in the game is huge enough that I will say I'll see some play compared to when you compare it to Hrothgar Artisan, but I think the fact that it has Plot, you can't if it's a 3-drop, you can't ring out on 2. It's got a ceiling, and I don't see it being a super crazy card, but item decks are close to being good, and this would likely fit in that, so we'll call it a 3-star card. Might end up seeing no play though. Brethren Battle Spear, 3-mana item again, rally, and +1/+3. So rally when you attack, it gives +1/+1. I should have mentioned that before, to a random creature in your hand. I think this is fantastic. This is a 4-star card. We're going to see this, I think, in a lot of different decks. Items themselves are quite clunky, but survivability, so this is a combat trick that will likely give you a value trade and turn the thing that is getting a value trade into a snowball. That's pretty huge. A lot of times you need to have a 2-drop for this to be functional, but I think items can carry their value into the late game. I'm always iffy on items, but I really do think this one is very, very powerful. Doesn't need to be in dedicated rally decks, can be in a lot of different stuff, mostly dedicated aggro decks or board-based aggro decks can use this. I think it's good. Just rally in general is really good. Been challenged by, I think that's Warriors. Gonna go ahead and say no, Mr. Warriors. But yeah, 4-star card. Aldrune Arms Master. 4-mana, 2/3 charge, rally. Really simple effect. I don't think it's that good. Rally is essentially worth 1 magicka in this case, so compare this to Battle Rage Orc, and that's been pretty consistent with most of the stuff, is that rally is usually worth 1 magicka. But Battle Rage Orc is only played because of Orc synergy and because it's cheap and goes face. This is a little bit more expensive and goes face. I don't think it's going to be that good. There's some world where I see this being good enough because it's charged. It's a guaranteed rally trigger, and maybe you need that, but I don't think it's that good, so 2 stars. Ash Berserker 4-star card. This is a very, very powerful effect, and it is, I think, a lot easier to trigger than people realize. With a Northwind Outpost out, this triggers by itself. With a Divine Fervor out, this triggers by itself. So, it's going to be a lot easier to trigger than people are realizing. Also gets repetitive value. It doesn't just draw a card. It will draw a card every single turn the 6 on the board, so it'll be annoying to deal with. I think there's a lot of control red decks that would love to have this card. I think it's going to fit into a decent amount of stuff. Could also be used for resource extension in a mid-range deck. So, pretty excited about this one. We're going to call it 4. I think it's going to see a good amount of play in a lot of different stuff. False Incarnate, 4-mana, 5/4. Your opponent can't gain. Drink for punishment. 4-mana, 5/4. Your opponent can't gain health. I don't think the effect is good enough. Stat line's really basic. 4-mana, 5/5 is sort of what you expect. There's 4-mana, 5/5 with an upside that I think is bigger than your opponent gain health. This will cheese people out at some point when people put in an aggro deck, and it'll just perfectly counter somebody, and they'll win a game because of it and never take it out of their deck, but I don't think it's that good of a card. 2 stars. Fighters Guild Steward. Summon a friendly creature with 5 or more power. Battles an enemy creature. This one it's very difficult to find a place for, but I'm still going to call it a 3-star card because I think battle effects are crazy. I think they're super powerful. They're just waiting for the right sort of synergy or waiting for the right card. Maybe this is it. It does require setup, and this is a reasonable cost where you have to pay for. So compare this to something like a Edict of Azura, which just kills it. This, you need to have a trigger and you need to attack. But I still think it's good enough. You can force it's shadowing interaction, which is enough. It is attached to a body, which Edict of Azura is not. So you can kind of force things to go the way you want them in terms of trades, and I think that's valuable enough that this will see a reasonable amount of play. I'm just not sure exactly where, which is why I'm not rating it higher. So we'll call this 3 stars. I look forward to seeing what people come up with this. I really think someday a battle card is just going to be crazy. Maybe it's this one. Imposter's Mission. Summon an imposter with a power and health equal to the power of your most powerful creature. So I believe it's just a textless thing that copies the amount. Calling it 2 stars. More a question mark than 2 stars, actually, because I'm not 100% sure how this one works. If there's something about it I'm not understanding, then come back to this. I might put like an annotation if I might not be able to do that. YouTube's kind of weird, but I don't know. I'm iffy on it. Prison Deathlord's kind of funny if you use it with this. If you have just a big statted creature, you get another big dumb statted creature, but it requires setup. And probably doesn't have the same abilities. If it has the same abilities, this is cool. It's a 4-mana doppelganger, but I doubt that's going to be the case. So, gonna say 2 stars. I might not be understanding the card correctly, though. I haven't gotten a chance to see this one in action. Kamana Tong Heavy plot, so you have to play a card before. Unsummon a creature in this lane with less power than Kamana Tong Heavy. Gotta call this one a 3-star card on the border of being 2. The fact that it's an orc makes me think, maybe, because orc decks already sort of run Belligerent Giant, so if you have something like a Militant Chieftain on the board, this becomes 5, and then you can bounce 4. This can bounce a Hive Defender as is, so that alone is pretty good, but it's also difficult to do that on turn 5, so you're bouncing Hive Defender on turn 6, which isn't that good. So very close to it too. The fact that it's an orc means I'll put it at 3, but Unsummon is a very powerful effect. Belligerent Giant essentially pays 3 mana for that effect when you compare it to something like Lumbering Ogrim. In this case, you're only paying 2, but it's more conditional. So, yeah, more conditional isn't good. You want to be able to just slam it and have it work, but in a lot of cases, it's just not going to on turn 5. This can't even unsummon a Young Mammoth, which comes out on turn 3. So, kind of a little bit iffy on it. I think maybe it'll find its way into some lists, but I don't think the power level's that high. Fetcher Fly Golem. 5 mana 5/5. When Fetcher Fly Golem it takes damage and survives, summon a 2/2 Fetcher Fly Swarm, which is another Daedra that is, I believe, just 2/2, no text. So, interesting. Again, this is going to be a 2-star card for the same reason that Fighters Guild, whatever it was, Retreat, I think it was Fighters Guild Retreat was, because I could see this fitting into Self-Harm Warrior, which is already, I think, a reasonable deck, more powerful than people realize. I think this fits into that, although it's not a huge power spike for that deck. It might not even make the list in that deck because of how good those 5s are already, kind of with stuff like Gristlehead Drag. But I think it's the effect is more powerful than it probably seems like because this is attached to a really good trading body, because you can, in red, use a lot of effects that trigger this before your opponent has a chance to interact, things like Rapid Shotskaven and Pyromancer, Cradle Crush Giant, and then spawning afterwards to kind of get back the fact that you damaged your own guy. I think it's okay. Probably power level isn't enough to make it playable, because if you do the self-damage thing, it puts it to 4 health, and that makes it very easy to deal with. But interesting effect, and fits into a deck that I think is going to get a little bit better in this expansion, so we'll call it 2 stars. Servant of Dagoth. 5 mana 4/4 summon if you have a creature with 5 power or more, +2/+2 and guard. I can see this being like a sort of self-triggered Whiterun Protector in a lot of cases. Easier to trigger than it looks, which is why I'm going to call it 3 stars. The effect is not that great if you do trigger it, and it's really bad if you don't, because 5 mana 4/4 is garbage. But I do think it's going to be easy enough to trigger in most decks that this is going to be a pretty solid card. Never going to kind of swing things too much in one direction, but just 5 mana 6/6 guard, that's just fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, and I think you can consistently get that, so we'll call it 3. Stendar's Hammer. This is going to be a 1-star card. This is a nerf to Merrick. This is a huge nerf to Merrick, and Hrothgar Forge, by the way. I have hit it off Hrothgar Forge. Double the wielder's power and health. The wielder can only attack creatures. So, possibly there's a combo I'm missing. I honestly might be missing a combo with this. But if it cost one less, I could say, oh, maybe you do something crazy with Rage. But I'm not seeing it. Maybe something with Breakthrough and your opponent has a creature in the lane, but the cost is high enough that it's difficult to kind of combo this with anything huge on the same turn. I'm just really iffy that this is going to do anything. This is a neat effect, but it's more of a nerf to Merrick than it is anything else. I don't see it making anybody's lists. So 1 star. I might be missing something in terms of combo, but 1 star. Cliff Hunter, Prophecy, Summon, Battle an enemy creature. 6 mana, 3/3. The comparison was made by Link when we were talking about this to Spear of Embers, where this is probably just a worse version of Spear of Embers. I really like battle cards. I want a battle card to be good eventually. I don't think it's this one. Stats are just so absurdly low. 6 mana, a 3/3 Prophecy is okay, but you're talking about like Brotherhood Slayer is that and has a positive effect, so it doesn't really pay that much for it. This pays a ton for that battle effect, which will likely only be useful on stuff like Skulks. So yeah, I think this is a 1 star card. I wish it was better. I want good battle cards. And it might be underrated the effect, underrating the effect here, like I've overrated it on other cards. But I think this is just bad. 1 star. Sharp-Eyed Ashkan. 6 mana, 6/6 plot, discard your hand, and then draw 3 cards. This is one where plot, I think, is actually a huge benefit, because a lot of times you won't want to discard your entire hand, but you can just play a 6 mana, 6/6, so it's fantastic that this has plot. It's better that this has plot than it has a summon ability, although it does mean you can only play it on turn 7. In some senses, it's a better Jarl. It's going to fit in those same roles. You don't have to be ahead on life. It also has a higher stat line, and draws more cards if your hand is empty. We'll call it 4 stars only because I'm not sure if aggro is going to be that good. If aggro is fantastic, we're going to see this be a 5-star card because it fits in that. But raw kind of face aggro, not board-based aggro, is something that hasn't been around for a bit. And even the board-based cards run enough high curve cards like 3s, 4s, 5s that they don't generally have a super empty hand. But I still think the effect is very powerful, and it's nice that you can avoid the downside. It's so amazing that you can avoid the downside with this card by just playing it as the first card of your turn. So I think it's pretty fantastic. 4 bordering on 5. I just don't know if aggro will be good enough to make this a 5. Scar Drillmaster. This one is a 4. People are going to immediately say rally decks. I don't care about rally decks. I care about the fact that this gives a buff to something and then draws a copy. That's ridiculous. This is Markarth Bannerman level. I think you can play this in Merrick. I honestly think you can just put this in Merrick immediately instead of Markarth Bannerman. A lot of people are cutting the raiding parties anyway. This is a great form of resource extension. It is a snowball by itself. It is something they have to deal with, and most importantly, it has 5 health. Not 4. You can't bolt it. It is very slow, though. You want this into some mid-range decks, so a 6 mana 5/5 is obviously very slow in those. Something that can be punished comes down right before Belligerent Giant turn. Belligerent Giant eats this thing for breakfast. It's horrifying. Belligerent Giant is things that should never be talked about with your children to this card, so that's a bit of the worry. But I think the power level is off the charts. I think it's like Bannerman in that if it attacks, you probably win the game. But I think it will not attack enough for this not to be 5 stars. We'll call it 4. Aspect of Hircine, another 4-star card. Red Tazcad, anyone? I think people have been calling it that. It's not Red Tazcad. Tazcad does a different thing because it is sticky and a lot of times used before before you have lethal. In this case, you get Tazcad in a little bit of a different way, where with Tazcad you had the idea that you could use it in a couple of different ways by either using it to trade or using it to go face or using it just as a threat they have to deal with because it spits out a 4/4. In this case, you choose between 1 and 2. I don't think either of these cards individually would be good. I don't think a 9 mana 6/6 charge would be very good. I don't think a 9 mana 12/12 guard would be very good. But the fact that there's such a huge difference between those effects and you can choose which one you want based on the situation, it's not like those effects are that far away from being playable on their own. So I think the versatility is insane. If you're close to being able to close it out, you charge it in. If not, you play just a huge thing, just a big thing. And that's usually tough for people to deal with if they don't have hard removal. Yeah, I think a 12/12 is going to be difficult to deal with if you don't have hard removal, although the cost is quite high. Just a very versatile card. I think that versatility is the reason it's a 4-star, not power level. But, you know, same thing. And then lastly, we have the Red Year. Deal 10 damage to each creature. Holy crap, this is insane. This is an absolutely fantastic card for Control Red. Control Dagoth specifically is going to love this card, although it is a unique, which sucks, but you do have Lonith to pull that out. I think this is going to be an amazing card for Red Control. Obviously, this is a unique, so you only get one of them, so it's going to be pretty easy to slot in their decks. I think this is just going to be just flat out a staple in anything that is slow and has red. There's the Dream of the Ancano OTK. Again, I think that's a dream, but I think just standard, this card is fantastic. 5-star card, very nice to see red get like control options that are sort of tilted towards what red does, because a lot of times it's been doing archer stuff, and you know, strength cards you don't think, oh, I'm gonna fly over here and shoot you with a lethal ping. You think destroy everything. That's what red here does. Destroys everything except wards, but still, pretty fantastic card. So that is gonna do it for part 1 of the review. We will be back tomorrow with part 2. That is going to be the intelligence cards and the willpower cards. I said I was just going to call them by their colors. I guess I don't know. The blue and yellow. We're going to do blue and yellow tomorrow. Bump my chair. We're going to do blue and yellow tomorrow, and then we'll do the rest the day after. Keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye out also for a review coming up with myself and a few other people that will be streamed on Twitch. We're going to bounce ideas off of each other, so that'll be fun. Includes, I believe, You Can Call Me Al, The Adventures of Dust, and Turquoise Link. And I think one other person who I'm not sure exactly who that is, but either Griffin or Lat. But I should stop talking. But thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with part 2 of the review, and it was a lot of fun. See you guys then.